When I started to reflect on my life and understand, I became a masterful people pleaser. I started scanning my environment to see how I could please everybody so nobody would be unhappy with me. My dad wanted an engineer. My mom wanted me to, missed her calling as a doctor. I just wanted everyone to stop fighting. No conflict here. Let's have harmony. I'll do both. And I went to engineering school. I went on to medical school. Now here's the problem. I get out at 31 years old and I can't understand why I'm feeling depressed and miserable. I said to myself, Neha, you better get clear and you better figure out who are you, what matters to you, and and learn to lean into conflict. Because if you don't, you will always be playing this game. So what I want to say to the people pleasers out there is,
When you talk about people pleasing, and I think this ties in, sometimes kindness, all the time, kindness is one of the most important things that we can have. But when it goes too far, I heard you on the Today Show. I've listened to you on Mel Robbins. You did some really cool stuff on people pleasing. Talk to the people pleasers out there. What's some things that they should be aware of, and maybe how to get better at making sure they're prioritizing what's most important to themselves?
sure. Well, I will say, all you people pleasers out there, I am you. So, pretty young in my life, I had some trauma where I was sent away to live with my grandparents. When you're in an Indian family, that's considered normal. Like they hand the kids around to the extended family. They don't think anything of it. In fact, they think it's a strength of our culture, which it is,
Later.
except yeah, later on it becomes quite a strength. But when you're little, you don't want to be separated from your primary parents and caretakers. And so I went away with my grandparents for 2 years, came back into the country. Um, and when I did, it was traumatic. And so what I did, my older sister didn't really want me to be there because why would she want to now divide love with her parents? And so she started bullying me in her own little way to, get me to kind of go away, hopefully. But what happened was my adaptation to that experience was to get very vigilant. First of all, blame myself. What did I do wrong? How come I was the one sent away? Why wasn't she sent away? Then the second thing I did, which I think now is kind of brilliant, I started scanning my environment to see how I could please everybody so nobody would be unhappy with me and I wouldn't get sent away again. Now, I only understood that decades later in therapy, in coaching and counseling. In when I started to reflect on my life and understand, I became a masterful people pleaser. I made everybody happy. I mean, all the way to the point that my dad wanted an engineer who was a boy, couldn't do the boy thing, but I gave him the engineering. My mom wanted me to, missed her calling as a doctor. I just wanted everyone to stop fighting. No conflict here. Let's have harmony. I'll do both. And I went to engineering school. I went on to medical school. Now here's the problem. I get out at 31 years old and I can't understand why I'm feeling depressed and miserable. I'm supposed to be at the pinnacle of my, you just did it. You set yourself up for a great life and career, except I wasn't happy. And so even though I'm going to make everybody else happy to try and avoid conflict and not be sent away again, I'm doing it subconsciously. It makes everybody around me happy, but let me tell you this. This is the moment I recognized what I was doing. In the Indian culture, another thing that they do is you want to be in science, engineering, medicine, computer science. And the second thing is you're a girl, you need to be married and putting out grandbabies fast, right? That's what your family and the community keep asking about. Well, I was 31 years old, so I was late. That was like, whoa. So before 30, they used to ask me, hey, Neha, when are you going to get married to a nice Indian boy? 30 came and went, and they said, Neha, when are you going to get married? 38 came and went, and they said, my traditional arranged marriage Indian parents said, we want grandkids. We don't care what order you do it in. Just go. And so what I will tell you is the first time that I heard them, after I was 30, kind of drop the Indian thing, I thought to myself, oh, there's never going to be an end to climbing other people's mountains. There will always be another one. Even though I did engineering and medicine, when I knew that wasn't enough, I said to myself, Neha, you better get clear and you better figure out who are you, what matters to you, and and learn to lean into conflict because in a healthy way, because if you don't, you will always be playing this game. And that was really the game change for me. So what I want to say to the people pleasers out there is, you know, if you're in a room, you're with people you care about, and you really just want to make them happy, even though your stomach is turning, your heart is racing, you have developed skills to override all of that because it doesn't matter as long as your environment is is cool. Now, the way you know that's you is when the needs and the way you behave change depending on the room you're in. If you're adjusting yourself and you feel exhausted at the end of the day, guess what? You're turning yourself into a pretzel to make other people happy. And you know what? By the time you contort yourself to, oh, is this what you want from me? Is this what you want from me? Right? What I want you to know is you're exhausted. It feels hard. Even though you love them, even though you want to stay connected to them, you wonder why you collapse on your bed at night and it just feels hard. Because when I decided to figure out what I valued and what I stood for, I get to be the same me at work, at home, with friends, on a podcast. I get to be the same me. And now it's easy and it's fun. But sometimes it means that there's people in your life who don't like that. They want you to be something different. And that pretzel idea that I gave you, here's the catch 22. Once you turn yourself into that pretzel for them, once they like you because you're behaving in a certain way, the catch 22 is it's not you they like.
They like the other version of you.
Yeah.
They like the version that they helped create and not the version that is them. I think from a people pleasing perspective, it's interesting because if you were to ask my family if I'm a people pleaser, they would probably say no. But if you were to ask anybody in my life that I work with, around, for,
Mm.
it would be a yes. And what I've found, and it was something I was thinking about just listening to some of your previous interviews and doing some research. I found myself thinking about the fact that I have struggled most of my life with pleasing and working for everybody else, but
Mm.
having a really easy no inside of my family. So
Wow.
I can say no quick to things with the people I love the most because I trust them so much. I know that who I am is the right version of me, and I'm very confident and very comfortable. I did it this week. My son and my wife texted. They were texting about wanting to go skiing. I'm like, no, we're not going. Like, I'm going to be gone in the following week. I know I'm too stretched. I'm too stretched. I had to say no. And it doesn't mean it ends there, by the way, folks. I still have to have conversations and the no has to go and extend. But I thought, how easy did I say that? And if that were you and a group of people that are doing huge things, impacting the world, and you guys said, hey, Scott, can you go skiing this weekend? I
Mm.
often would say, we'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out. Right.
Mhm.
And so even when, and I've gotten pretty good at saying no throughout my career and throughout my life. But I think to your point something that I found really interesting is it's always a good drill to be self-aware, right? Because we have to know that just because you know it doesn't mean you're doing it all the time. So it might get easier. It might be something that's good. But, I thought that was a really interesting concept because I was like, wow, I'm good at no here, but not so good at no everywhere else. So how do we get better there? That's something that I'd like to do.
Well, Scott, what you're really speaking about, and everybody listening or watching can really do this for themselves, is there's concentric circles of people in our lives, right? So it might be acquaintances, they might be right here. And then there might be my good friends that are right here, and my work community, and my family, and then my intimate partnership, and my children. And so, what's interesting about what you're saying is it tells me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I'm intuiting as you're saying it. In your family, you were encouraged to be you. And you were not rejected by the pack growing up. That maybe you had a different opinion, maybe you wanted something, but the people around you helped you build self-trust that they weren't going anywhere. Their love was not conditional upon your opinions, preferences, and behaviors. They were sticking with you in this lifetime. And you have now taken that into the family you have created. And there is this solid sense of trust that is synonymous with family for you.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, in my book, I start out and I say that I describe that coming out as the firstborn grandson in an Italian Catholic family with five daughters and a son. I was the first grandson and the second boy. So you can relate to this in a cultural. My great grandfather, after my grandmother had her third girl in a row, my great grandfather off the boat from Sicily says to my grandfather, maybe a next time, Jack. And about all right, well, that'll do, but it's maybe a next time, right? So I came out, I described myself as Simba. You know, when they're lifting you up, I was absolutely built up to the point where, you know, there is no lack of confidence or trust inside of my family, to the point, and also even so that I know for my sister and even my brother, sometimes my voice is the loudest or carries a
Mm,
little bit more of a stick, and I have to humble myself because I was given so much of that. And I bring it up because I think listeners, you know, they like to hear what we go through, like what
mm,
we're doing, and you couldn't be more right. There's a major trust, and I want my boys, I have two sons, I want my boys to have that trust with our family. And so you know, but we'd like to extend it outside. And I think
right.
what I've learned as I've gotten older is maybe how to do it a little bit better on the outside, saying no more often. And you see, you get burned a little bit more. You're talking about establishing these circles, the individuals in our lives that are in those circles. I call it my love category. You know,
Mhm.
every year I inventory the who's that matter the most. And believe it or not, the older I get, sometimes I don't know why, I have older friends that are falling in that have become so much more important as I've gotten older because they've seen different iterations of me. They've been
Yeah.
able to grow with me, not just the new version or the best version, or, you know, it's like, hey, I was on Windows 1.0, but now I'm on Windows like 52.0. It's really cool to see the different versions.
You bet. You bet. I think that's incredible. And you start to know what you value, right? You value that they're evolving with you. You value that they really know you when when you show up as a certain polished version, the grown-up, version of you. They loved you even when you were rough and, not that.
Yeah.
So I really resonate with that. And I think the reason I really brought this in is self-trust and the ability for us to know and trust in something higher. Like I told you I was sent away when I was young, and so my core wound inside me is abandonment. And and so with that, I am really afraid of rejection, of people leaving me, of me not being good enough, perfect enough, whatever it is, right? And so in that space, I would be the perfect person for people pleasing. And so, what I want to make sure everybody knows is I want you to always care about what other people's feedback is, how they're feeling. I want you to be compassionate to them. But as you start to build self trust inside you, what I hope for in the end is that you can turn up the volume of your own heart slightly louder than you can hear the voices of others. So that when it's time to make a decision, I can say to you, oh my gosh, I would love to go skiing this weekend. And Scott, I have started this year promising myself that I will take care of me as I move in the world. I've been doing, today was my 11th day of yoga in the morning, no joke, and on the road.
That's hard.
So my part, because I'm a people person, my partner and I got on Zoom and we had accountability in doing it. And so what I know is I not only will not be able to keep that up if I go, but I will feel bad that I broke this promise to myself. So I care about you. And what I can commit to you is this season or next season, one of these 2 seasons, you and I are going skiing.
Yeah.
But I want to do it where I can do it and feel good about me and be present with you. Deal?
Yeah. It's perfect. And
Right.
that's perfect. Yeah.
And
It's
so I think we just got to let the other person know that we value them, that we value them, we care about them, and we care about ourselves. And so there's this dilemma I'm going through, and I'm going to say no, but it's an inspired no. It's not a fearful no. It's not a, okay, like, we'll make it happen. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Like, I'll figure it out. It's like a frazzled, fearful no. I mean, right. Even if I'm getting there and I say, oh no, I just can't do it. It's not even really about the no to someone else. It's about the energy you have underneath saying no. When I say I would want nothing more than to go skiing with you and everybody that's going on this trip, I would love to do that. And I made a commitment to myself. This time I'm going to honor the commitment to myself and say yes to me. I hope we can do it again. And
yeah.
next opportunity, if I have more notice, I will build in my self-care routine so I can take the weekend off.
Well, I've been saying no to skiing for a lot of years because I really don't like the cold like that. I do cold
Mm.
plunges and I like all that stuff. So it's hard sometimes inner family to know whether dad's saying no because he doesn't really want to do it, or is dad saying no because I also call it unnecessary risk. So my boys are both soccer players and they love, so I'm like, it's kind of an unnecessary risk, but there's a lot of depth there. But the reality is it's a great example to what you're talking about, and the confidence. I love that you established the confidence that we receive even from a young age, and establishing even what your trauma comes from or where your challenges come from. Maybe it's not trauma to you, but maybe safety is really difficult for you. So mine revolved around safety, and so if you said abandonment, for me it's safety, and a lot of the decisions I make and don't make revolve around keeping my family unit safe, thinking that I
Mm.
have to help everybody in our family. So one of the other things I'd like to bring up that just on this topic, just a little bit deeper, is when you talk about people pleasing, families are dynamic and they often are at have different levels of success, especially financial success. One of the
Mhm.
challenges a lot of our listeners have is that the more successful they are, the more it's not always people pleasing, but it's the kindness of just knowing that there's more to give and that you have more to give. And they really struggle with knowing when to give all of what they have or to maybe lessen a little bit. There's this balance of, oh well, my and this is, I've been in financial services for 21 years, so I could speak to personal stories. I could speak to every story you can imagine. I've heard families just propping people up. What do you say to the people that they have this internal guilt that they've had a level of success, they want to give it back, and it becomes unhealthy at a certain point? You understand, you follow what I'm saying there? Do you
Yeah, A
understand where I'm
hundred
going?
percent. 100%. Well, I think it goes back to the relationship with money. And I believe that money is energy. I, I don't believe that my net worth equals my self worth. And I think that's a big mistake people make. I believe that money is a tool for me to be comfortable, play, enjoy, and explore in the world and share with others. And for me personally, my higher purpose is to help elevate collective consciousness. And so for me, if it's investing in a book for people in the world that I can scale myself and not be there, yep. So what it is you go back down to your values. What do you value most? And if you that guilt, it might be having you give to someone else when it actually doesn't feel good to you. You're like, "Oh, I'll just give it because then I don't have to deal with my brother calling me again, asking me for money or, whatever my parents need or my" right? Here's the thing. One of the biggest gifts I've found in my life has come through struggle. I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor. Those were not easy. And there were days that I failed a class, there were days that I didn't pass my boards. I mean, crazy stuff that was happening. Those were the moments I became stronger. So what I would ask you is it really that you're guilty about not giving someone else, or is it that you cannot sit in the discomfort of other people's hardship and challenges? Because if you can't sit in your own discomfort and you want to alleviate that, what I want you to know is you're actually handicapping the other person because they never get to grow and know what it's like to come over that. And I've in my business of 15 years, I've gone to zero twice. Twice. But you know what I know now? I know that if a pandemic ever happens again, if something ever happens again, I have the self-trust now to figure it out. And you know, I will. I asked for help, people gave it to me, and I took care of it in a year. Awesome. But I needed to go through that experience. So the question is, if you're someone who's really connected, you love other people, when they are not doing well, do you make that your own? Do you not know the line between where you end and somebody else begins? Can you not sit next to someone as they learn their life lessons and allow them and just be a support to them and trust that they are strong, resourceful, and capable? Now, if they ask you for money and you check in with yourself and you're like, "Oh, this aligns with my values. This feels good to give. And I am in service." And you say to them, whether they're family or whether they're not, you make a clear agreement. Yes, you'll pay this back in a year. Yes, you'll pay this back whenever you can, or you don't need to pay this back. Whatever somewhere in the middle, whatever it is. Check in with your own body because your own physiology gives you the answer. If when you say these sentences to someone else or you're contemplating this, you feel constricted, heavy, tight, you know that you're protecting yourself. If your body is open, light, ease, you feel energy flowing and generosity coming out of your heart, and it feels like the right thing to do, not here in your heart. You gotta match what your mind is saying. "Oh my god, they're not gonna like me. They're never gonna talk to me. They're never inviting me to that party again. I'm gonna get out of the cool club." I don't know what you're saying in your head, but also check your body and see if there's constriction, heaviness, tightness, openness, ease, and lightness, because your body keeps the score. There's a good book on that. And your body always knows. It never forgets. One more thing I just wanted to say is when we were talking about trauma, for some people that seems really heavy. Gabor Mate is amazing on trauma. He's just a genius, right? But I love when he said trauma can be something bad that happens to us. There's plenty of things that are awful that happen to people and children and okay. But he said, don't be mistaken. Trauma can also be your needs as a child not being met. So you needed someone to notice you. You needed someone to jump up and down when you gave them a drawing when you were 6 and they had a look of disappointment like this is all you're giving me or that's not cute or whatever. So our own soul, like our souls as we grow up, need the love and attachment of the world around us because we're so helpless and dependent on each other when we're growing up. And so, yes, it can be something big and bad, but yes, it can be something that's just as simple as I was the third in line in my family, and my older brother was Simba, and he got all the attention, and I didn't feel like anybody noticed whether I was there or not. Right? So there's a much more subtle level of this. And I think the pandemic helped people start talking about it all because the world went through what I call a global heart attack together. And now there's nobody who hasn't gone through rapid change that they were not voluntarily going through themselves. So,
Yeah, so much good stuff in there. I mean, on the money thing, there's two things that come to mind, and that is the energy. I think realizing the abundance of financial opportunity in the world and not having that scarcity mindset is a major change for so many individuals. I know personally it changed my entire life when I just started to pay attention to what I was learning, how I was growing, the things that were happening, and every time one chases money, they never catch it. It's never enough. But when you actually do good things and you provide a service for someone and you help someone and you serve something outside of yourself, it just
It's a
comes.
byproduct.
It's
It's a
it's
byproduct.
side, yeah.
But what are we doing in our world? Like in corporate America, everybody's like, bottom line, next quarter, this number, that number, right? I really subscribe to something called conscious capitalism, which is companies need to have a purpose higher than profit. You tell me the impact you're making in the world. Tell me why this company exists that's going to change the world and help people be better. The second one is whenever you make a decision, don't just look at your shareholders. Look at every stakeholder it's going to impact. Tell me what they all value, and then give me a solution where everybody matters and everybody wins. And we can do that in our families as well. And then the third one is conscious leadership, that no matter who you are, you can grow to the next level. And the fourth one is we must build conscious and caring cultures and care about our people more than, oh, this person, I'm using this person for my own gain, right? Like, do you care about them? Do you know them? And so there's this way that I think if we infuse the heart, which is often missing in organizations and companies and families sometimes even like, hey, do this. I said, do that. You need to get an A. You need to do this. Why didn't you do the dishes? Right? Like, if we can just slow down and connect to our hearts and then see this soul as another being who's looking for connection, how might we say it differently, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I run a company and we've created a really interesting culture. And every Monday we spend the first 30 to 45 minutes in what we call it's like water cooler talk. We get on Zoom across the country. It's like, hey, what'd you get into this weekend? And people share challenges, they share things and then we do wins and challenges on Friday that are more corporate based. They're more business related, but
Yeah.
sometimes they're personal. They're like, hey, I've lost 35 pounds. And just having that, the other people are connected to you. They want to work for you. So I definitely agree. I also think something that
I want to join your company.
yeah, you can come. I'll tell you
That
what, if you
sounds
want to,
fun.
if you want to join, you're always welcome to come in and pop in on one in the mornings. But it's
Mm.
just a way for it comes down to relationship versus transaction.
Yep.
I can't stand that when you are a transaction individual, you're shaking my hand, you're looking me in the eyes, you read a book on how to connect, and I feel it. I know your energy. And
Mm.
that's part of the trauma that's good. You like realize as you grew, you are who you are because of exactly how your story went. And
Yeah.
those struggles and all those things made you who you are. And if you weren't left at 3 months old, you
Yep.
wouldn't be standing in the space that you are, teaching all these other individuals how to get more comfortable in that space. And
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that frequency. When you're attuned to the right frequency, it's how Mel Robbins describes you walking out of the Today Show to meet her. And she did a 5. She smiled when you were 10 feet away. When you were 5 feet away, she said hi. You asked to hug her. The energy exchanges, and you're on her show immediately. Like, these are the things that happen because we're relationship driven. Companies that are only transaction driven. And I've always been a capitalist. I
Mhm.
have no problem with conscious capitalism either. I actually think that's a beautiful thing. I'd like personal responsibility at every level, so I really would love to see everybody have that. It gets harder the more your company grows and the more you get to a point where you lead, the more
Yeah.
you watch people take advantage of the position. And so the things that you might look at, they are looking at it differently. And it becomes this coldness that happens as people get to the real top of these big corporations. And they're like, well, nobody cares about me anyway. And so that's what it's really a lack of connection, which is what
Yeah.
you're talking about,
Yep.
because even those people at the very top need that connection. The last thing I
It's
wanted to
like
say,
them especially, actually.
oh, 100%. They're the emptiest. They're the emptiest. And there have been times in my career where I felt completely empty because, there'll be weeks where we go and I ask everybody about their week. And so rarely does someone say, hey, what did you get into? Or how was your kid's soccer
Mhm.
game? Or, and so you have to give without expectation. But one last point to what you were saying that I think is really cool is I've always taught our kids, and we give food every Christmas Eve, and we do all these things where we have to remind ourselves we're giving without expectation. But you bring up a really interesting point, and that is you actually have to give without expectation, and you have to expect less out of yourself. Meaning that something I've been meditating on a lot is Father Mike Schmitz out of Minnesota did a homily or a sermon on you are not the main character in the story. And if you
Mm,
constantly feel like you're the main character in the story, there's a lot of challenges with that. And so you could take that spiritually. You could take that to just thinking that it's your job to fix everything in everyone's life. But the
mhm.
expectation is not just me giving you and saying, whatever you do with this, I'm so excited to be able to give it to you. But it's also actually not expecting much more out of myself than just the gift. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times you want more out of that scenario, like you want to feel more, and that's a very natural thing for people to discuss and to feel. And so I was thinking about that as you were talking. It just brings up a lot of interesting dynamics that I think people think about every day. We don't often talk about, because you do have to be very safe and very comfortable. And so a lot of people avoid that stuff. They're afraid of the personal side of their life.
Well, I think in addition to what you're saying is money brings up control. And, when you're saying give without expectation, um, what's interesting, let's just say I'm going to give someone on the street in San Francisco, I'm there and there's someone who's homeless and they're asking for money. First of all, there used to be a time that I couldn't look at them. I couldn't even look in their direction. In fact, I would act like I didn't see them, but it's like so obvious that I saw them, right? Like that embarrassing moment that you're like, oh my God. Well, after I did some work on my own relationship to money, what I realized is I was a struggling entrepreneur. And when I looked at them, it was too close to me. I had like a 3-month runway of if I didn't make it, I had this fear of like, oh, oh my God, like that's actually reality. Like that could actually be true. So then I started to look at them as souls, as fellow souls. Like I'm just going to get a little woo woo here, but this is what I believe as a doctor. I have spent decades on the entry of life when life comes into the world and countless times sitting at the bedside when it's leaving. And I think while everyone was backpacking in Europe in their 20s, that's what I was doing. And I figured out that people gave me the end of the game. They gave me the way to win the game.
The recipe.
The recipe, the secret, they would share with me. I'm this 28-year-old doctor, and they're like, "Are you old enough to be a doctor? And how can you be here?" Right? And I had to grow up fast. But what I believe is we are souls, and soul can mean whatever you want. There's an energy that leaves the room when the body is still there. I know it, and I don't even have to be looking at the person. I can feel it. I believe we are souls that inhabit a body so that we can play on earth and play with each other and explore and take in data. And, that's the purpose of the body. And so we have this energy inside of us. And here's I recently went to India and I did a lead like Gandhi week-long workshop in his ashram in India. And they asked me, "What is your purpose?" And you know how you speak about impact and purpose and energy and what's the difference you're making in the world? This is what I came up with. And I don't know if I'm going to say it exactly right because I'm just doing it off the top of my head, but here we go. Every interaction, experience, and relationship is meant to help us grow, heal, is meant to grow, heal, and unite us. And if we trust ourselves and we trust each other to do this sacred dance of our souls together, where we learn our life lessons together, we can evolve as one world family. Serving as a catalyst to make this happen is the purpose of my life.
That's great.
So I actually think that when things go wrong, when we have to make decisions about money, when we have been a people pleaser for a lot of our life and we're waking up to it, those are never things to be ashamed of or embarrassed of or awkward of. It's like, oh, I have another chance to learn this life lesson. I now, am I going to get it this time? Do I get to pass this one and go to the next level? Or do I want to stay and get this lesson again?
That's
Because
great.
it's gonna show up with a different name and a different situation. It'll be your boss next time. It'll be, a colleague next time, whatever it is. And so all these topics that we speak about, what I say is, people say, how can you talk about things that are so heavy and hard? Like, how can you talk about them and how does it energize you? I actually see it as my soul evolving and us growing together as one world family. And that's what I'm experiencing as you're doing this podcast. Like, how many amazing souls get to hear this, get to be touched, get to shift by something you've said, some interaction we've had? Like, who gets to be touched that we will never know? Our job is to serve as a catalyst and be real. And so I really thank you for that.
That's awesome. And I think it always brings me, so in the fun in dealing with money for 21 years, I too dealt with people at the end of their life so often, and how empty and
Mhm.
frustrated and um you know, they're missing something, right? So many of them. Some of them are living perfect lives and loving their lives, but it reminded me, and I've said this on the show before. I've done 4 eulogies, and I did
Mm.
the I d- four. I've done more, but I did 4 for my grandparents. Each of them were different. All 4 of my grandparents have passed now, and there was a commonality between all of them. You talk about who they love, the impact they made in your life for the world around you. You talk about the energy that they provided you in the world. You talk about their, for my one of my grandfathers, his love of God. He was my my grandmother's Sicilian grandmother, the one that made me feel like Simba. He was the stalwart. He had the focus. And I remember standing up in the church and delivering these, and I can feel that energy. But when you talk about those things, you're actually having a deeper level of a connection. You're not afraid that I'm going to think you're being too woo woo. That's
Mhm.
really because the key is somebody needs to hear these things, and I
Mhm.
enjoy it. I like
Yeah,
to build on that. That's a connection on a much deeper level. It's not surface level. In
that's
fact,
right.
you and I can walk in a room and we can know exactly who's surface and exactly who's deep by the first 5 seconds of a conversation. And so when you talk about things that are in this level of depth, and your goal is to unite, humanity and to bring people together on a larger scale, to serve as a catalyst, as a spark, depth of conversation, connection, thinking and sharing with people is so valuable. And I think that's a very worthy purpose.
And Scott, it requires self-trust. Back to the big circle round, right? And at the bedside, what I'd say is very similar to those eulogies is what I learned, which is people are dying and they never spoke to me about the things we spend our entire lives chasing: money, cars, houses, titles, Ivy League schools. They never told me any of these things. The only things they spoke about were they loved? Did they love well? What impact did they make? And what regrets did they have? And the regrets I found were never about something they did and failed. It was always about not having the courage to, letting fear stop them. And those were the lessons I walked away with. And when you were saying this, you learned it through 4 eulogies to people that shaped you. and you could see the difference in all of them and the impact they made in the world. And that's my wish for people that, society tells us that it's going to be money and the name on your door and whether you have a corner office and what car you drive and how many likes you have on social media and all these things. And I've just got to say, I think it's an inside job, and I think it's about love, and I think it's about, serving, but serving in a way that takes care of you. And that's like the fine dance, that I think we get wrong and then we learn and then we get it right and we only get it right for a little bit and then we fall and then we do it again. And so I think of all of this as life school lessons, and I'm just happy to be with everybody who's listening and be on that journey of life school together.
Yeah, it reminds us something else I've been deep thinking about recently, which I do a lot. I'm an energy person, so I love the energy of a room. I have no problem being extroverted. Jim Quick says that an introvert walks into a room and has 5 chips, and after each conversation, they give out 1 chip, and when all 5 chips are gone, they're done. They have nothing left to give. An extrovert walks into the room and starts every morning with 0 chips. And
Mm.
every conversation builds until they crash. And what usually happens to us extroverts is that you build, you build, you build, and then you are absolutely exhausted because you end up overdoing it, which plays right into your teachings and your writings. But one of the things I was deep thinking about was, how many people do you love that you would stand up at their eulogy and deliver at their funeral and deliver a eulogy that you would tell the world, not just your friend, but stand up in a room, a crowded room, and tell everybody how much that person meant to you. And how many of you haven't done that in real life? How many of us haven't done that? I started Googling the living eulogy. I started thinking, what if I created a business that was the living eulogy, where people actually come on and they go, "Hey, Mom, it's Scott. I just wanted to tell you, first of all, I feel like we grew up together. We have all these things in common. I'm so grateful. These are the challenges, but here's how we came out." And you just share the things that often, the minute you start to share them in real life, it gets too deep or it gets too uncomfortable. And then someone ends up frustrated, or, you're in an Italian family. I don't know how the Indian families are, but in the Italian family, you can get super upset with each other, walk away, walk back in like 20 minutes later, and nobody remembers anything. And so you're done. It's over.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just something I've been deeply thinking about. And I think to your point, think of the impact that this conversation could have on somebody, on thinking just about somebody that has really made a difference in your life right now. And have you told them? Have
Oh,
you
I think
showed
that's
them?
such a great way to start, because there are people, what we're not saying is to go and be vulnerable with people who you don't have that trust
Great
with,
point. Yep.
because that can be really harmful to you and it can really unravel self-trust. And so to know who you're speaking to and know, give it certainly take risks, certainly trust yourself, and you might make some mistakes or whatever it is. But what I say is pay attention to how people show up, because they're telling you who they are from the beginning and you want to believe them. Allow them to make mistakes and then allow yourself to surrender and learn that lesson. But certainly, what I'd say is, start with somebody that you haven't told them how much of an impact they've made, and do exactly what you said, which is just tell them,
Nothing
and
feels better, does it? Nothing feels better,
that's so
does it?
true. And even bring to mind, I'd say, somebody in your life who you'd like to have a closer connection with, and start there, because that is the invisible bridge between our hearts. You can build it through authentic appreciation. And even the people that have hurt you, there's something good about them. And there's somewhere that you can see their light. And when you hold them in that space of being strong and capable and resourceful, oftentimes they show up as that. but when we go into something thinking, oh God, not you again. Oh God. And we wonder why they don't have the energy that we're wishing for, right? Like the real question is, how are you showing up in this? And might you be able to shift how you show up and watch the conversation shift as well?
Yeah, that giving first mentality really does pay off. Isn't it crazy how I'm 45. I wish I knew some of these things in my 20s. It would be so much easier. Life would have been not the same journey, but it definitely is interesting. I look at the way I text people now, where someone will text me something. I am extremely quick to say thank you, extremely more open with the I love yous, extremely more like just vulnerable in general, but in a way that's allowing people to feel that energy,
Yeah.
because I know I'm more in touch with what I need. I'm more in touch with who I am. And I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of your messaging, is really to identify who you are inside, what you need, and how you need to find that, and how you have to protect against some of the things that could take that energy away. And obviously, you're doing a great job of getting it out there and showing everybody. What are you most excited about that you're doing right now? Like what's coming up in your life? What are you? I mean, I have the book in front of me here, so I know that Powered by Me, From Burnout to Fully Charged at Work and in Life. I know that can help people. I know that everybody feels that at some point in time in their life. But is there anything you're doing right now that you're really excited to talk about, or that you want to just share with our listeners?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd say is when people do the Powered by Me assessment, which I'd love to give your group, by the way, if you're open to that, um, where you can do like a 15-minute pulse check to figure out where you are from burned out to fully charged at work and in life. And you do that by figuring out where you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual level. Now, when you and I were talking and I was saying, when you're giving money to somebody else, you don't just make a mental decision. That's how I want you to do this pulse check of burnout. Your mind may say, oh, I'm getting enough sleep, but your body feels constricted, tight, and heavy. Okay, I don't care what the mind is saying right there. Your body is the one that gets to overrule that and say, no, like doesn't feel right to me. Or, you say, I don't know about that one. Well, check into your body, because your body, if it's open and at ease, it might be just fine. So what I'd say is I want to give them a pulse check on that. So I'll give that to you and you can put it in the show notes. Yeah. So that's intuitiveintelligenceinc.com/burnout hyphen RX. So we'll give that to them. I found that on book tour, that was the thing that people liked the most. And so I want to give them something really practical. The second thing I'd say is what people really struggle with is um, why they become people pleasers that we've been talking about is often because they have a biological response to conflict. They don't know how to do it. And so my first book, which looks like this, it's Talk RX. I don't know if you can see it. Talk
Yep.
RX is literally how two things. One, how to lean into healthy conflict clearly, concisely, and compassionately. And secondly, if you're having physical symptoms, but you've gone to the doctor and the doctor says to you, you're fine. And you're like, wait, but I don't feel fine. What this book does is share with you how sometimes once you've gotten a clean bill of health from the medical world, your physical symptoms, whether they're migraines, chest, discomfort, whatever it is, sometimes they're due to unresolved issues on a mental, emotional, social, and spiritual level that are showing up in your physical body to get your attention. And so that book kind of delineates that to show you you're not nuts, okay? And the medical world, what I'm working on is getting doctors to say this to someone who came in with chest pain. Hey, Neha, there's good news and there's bad news. I'm a 53-year-old woman, prime like age to be, having this experience. Hey, there's good news and bad news. The EKG shows us your electrical rhythm on your heart's great. It's pumping well, and you didn't have a heart attack. The physical aspect of your heart is doing great. Here's the bad news. I think something unresolved on a mental, emotional, social, or spiritual level might be showing up in your chest tightness here to get your attention. Do you have any idea what that might be? And every time I say this to my patients, they say, I want a doctor like you. Like, where have you been? and so I want to give it to everybody. Like, let yourself know that you're not nuts. Trust your body. And that might be helpful. And then they can find me at intuitiveintelligenceinc.com. And this year, what I'm doing is incorporating Powered by Me and TalkRx into company-wide wellness programs where from CEO to new hire, we are having the entire company go through this experience of vulnerability, learning practical tools, getting like sharing like you and I are doing, but doing it one company at a time. And that's just one of the things I'm really excited about. So I think this year is about collaboration on a new level, and for me, and taking things in wider arenas and creating transparency in our world on a bigger level.
Yeah, I really enjoy getting deep in these kinds of conversations, and what it really comes from is a curiosity. And
Mm,
as a doctor, when you're curious,
yeah.
that's the best kind of doctor. It's called the practice of medicine for a reason, and it's not because you have all the answers. It's because you're practicing and doing the best job that you possibly can. But the more curious you are, that's what got you into the white coat in the first place, was your
Yep.
curiosity to learn. And
Yep.
when we keep having that in life, it's so valuable to everything that we have. It's just asking that extra question. And if you're the kind of person that's out there that feels like people just share stuff with you all the time, and
Mhm.
they tell you things that they don't tell anybody else, and they tell you that they're like, I've never told anybody this. There's a
Mhm.
reason. There's a reason. And obviously, you're one of those people that people are
Mm.
sharing. You're making an impact in the world. And I'm grateful for the conversation. Our listeners are really going to enjoy this episode. And I just want to thank you again for being on the show.
Scott, I think I'd be friends with you. I think I'd be friends with you outside podcast world. So I have had such a fun time doing this, and I just want to thank you for sharing me with your world.
Well, we will be friends outside this world. We are out. We are absolutely going to connect. We'll do some big things in the future together. But thank you so much again for joining me. And make sure you find her, buy her book, and help support whatever she's doing, because the message is grand. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.